really important because that's why we have this clap in the videos, you know, is that you have the visual cue and at the same time you've got the audio cue. That's the whole point. Recording?
Explosion.
Okay. So welcome to week number 3. You've done some excellent reports, and today I'm going to talk you through a couple of things. And I think we can almost make it rather quick since we already talked about quite a few things in the with the reports themselves. So, which of these looks good? Which of these does not, and why?
I'm going to say the right.
You may want to close the door.
Because the image goes all the way to the side.
Yeah. The left one indeed looks like you put it on in the supermarket.
I'm not sure I like the white text in the bottom over to the right. I might have made another solution there, but otherwise the right.
Also, the font sizing on the left looks like it was done by a monkey.
Yeah, the relax and then the dot.
Yeah.
Maybe if you leave out the dot, it would be better.
But the fact that the best way is the same size as the name of the hotel, which was built in the 70s, by the look of it.
Probably I would change the right one as well.
Yeah.
It's better.
So what we learn from this is that when you design anything, you actually you guide the order in which people digest information, right? So what is the first thing you look at on the left side?
Relax.
And then?
The picture.
The picture. And then?
Probably the new room rates for all seasons.
Ah, is that the order you want people to look at it? What's the first thing you look at on the right?
Picture.
Or the best way to relax.
So there's a visual order. Huh? I mean, it's more clearer what is it you look at first, right? Probably first the image. That's general truth. I mean, it's like images take a lot of attention. That's what people look at usually first. Then headlines, and then the hierarchy of the headlines, right? So it's probably new beach hotel, then the best way to relax, right? Whereas on the left side, it's a bit messy. So again, it's your responsibility to think about in which order do you want people to take in the information you present? And you do that by visual hierarchy. What just looks more important? And you design that, the sequence. That's important. The other thing, of course, is that, again, the rule of thumb, the less the better. So, you know, if you can get away with 3 text sizes, do that. If you can get away with 2, even better. You know, on the left side, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. Right? So essentially, the less, the better. Now, the interesting thing about positioning items on a screen or in any kind of surface is that the geometrical middle is not necessarily the optical middle. Right? So you can position an element exactly in the center, measure it, it's all okay. It just doesn't look that way. So as a rule of thumb, make it 10% higher, so it doesn't sort of like hang inside of the box. Right? If you have picture frames on the wall, the bottom is usually always a little bit bigger than the top, purely for visual effect. Here's another trick that you can use, of course, the golden cut. Who's familiar with this?
The golden rule. Talk about the golden rule, as you like Fibonacci sequence slowly approaches 1 point, ratio 1.6.
Yes. So this square has this proportion, right? I put in there. So different ways of sort of like visualizing this proportion. But the square has this proportion, and also the length that you see, A, B, and C. So somebody mentioned to me he was in a cinema yesterday.
Yeah, I went to Batman.
Okay. Tonight, when you watch television or anything, please have a close look. Whenever you have a frame, usually it's like the close up on the face. Is this face usually placed in the middle of the screen or somewhere else?
So about.
Exactly. When people in movies or otherwise place elements on the screen, you never put the actor straight in the middle. You always put him off a little bit. Looks so much better. Right? So tonight, whenever you watch television or movies, pay attention to that. Look, where do they actually place the actor? And in the acting, of course, there's a different thing, because usually they have a direction, right? So they actually look like to the right. And then you need to have more space over here than over here, right? But even if they look straight ahead, you just don't put them in the center. It just looks a bit boring. And the same thing holds true for your elements that you place on surfaces. You know, it doesn't have to be center. Having a bit off-center just looks much more interesting. And then this is a potential candidate about roughly where to place it. Another rule of thumb. You see there, you know, it's kind of difficult to just remember this proportion, but there's an easy way of doing it. So we've got a sequence of numbers down there, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34.
Very much.
Which one is the next one?
55.
You get it?
89.
So you always add the 2 before. 3 plus 5 is 8. 5 plus 8 is 13. 13 plus 8 is 21, and so forth.
The ratio of 3 to 5 is 1 to 1.6.
So this is essentially one way of remembering it relatively easily. With full numbers, you don't need to have it actually 100% precise, you know, but roughly that gets you there. So which of these look good, and which one of these does not, and why? What about it?
Yes, the headline is aligned with the text. Red text.
I would say that one is good, but yeah. I quite like the on the right one as well, with the line in the middle. Would be nice, depending on the audience. That below is the middle part is also, but the right below. A bit strange because you don't really know where to start to read. Some kind of flyer for a music event or something could be interesting.
I mean, first of all, the first thing to recognize is that whatever kind of element you place on the surface is that it forms lines, an axis, right? The bottom right, I didn't actually draw any lines at all, but you see one, right? Top right as well, I didn't draw any lines, but there are 2 of them, right?
That means
Every object creates this kind of lines, and therefore it is important that you take care of it again, that you actually do align them to each other. Bottom left doesn't have any clear lines because this thing in the middle is just chaotic. It's not a good idea. Top left is a bit glued to the left, right? It's really like smugged onto it, like this doesn't look right. If it would be a bit more to the right, a bit more space, it would be better.
Maybe if you justified bottom left into 2 columns.
Yeah, you could do that. That would be one way of getting around it.
Straight line.
Yeah.
So here's something else that you can look at or consider. Contrast.
Like a drug or something. The bottom left looks like it's cutting off the title into 2 words.
Yeah?
Could be your intention. Can't split up into.
It has a very strong contrast there, right? The black and the white. It really draws your attention, right? And maybe it's a bit too much. And top
Right's a bit boring.
There's no contrast in there. Huh?
Right.
So it's something that you can, again, it's something to just to be aware of, to think, I mean, just to look at contrast. Now, it's something you can play with. You can do it too much, too little, you know, just getting it right, but it's something to consider. So let's get to some of the technicalities. As I mentioned before, every element that you place on the surface has edges, right? And edges form lines, and you just have to align them. So the way to go about it is actually, before you do anything, you actually create a grid. And this grid then enables you to have consistency, right? So then on multiple pages, things will roughly be in the same position, right? So you have the inner margin, outer margin. We already talked about it, that the inner margin should be bigger than the outer margin, simply so that when the book folds, that you don't lose this, because you lose the space inside there. And yeah, these are the other names for the items you need. Of course, you can also have the grid not only vertically, but also horizontally. So if you have a grid like this, you can place images, texts, whatever you want, into this grid. And then, even though maybe all pages look differently, they still look like somewhat they belong to each other. They form a family. And the grid takes care of that.
Can you span elements across multiple grids?
Yes, about multiple cells.
Yeah.
Yes, you can. So you can have an image that takes the top 4 quadrants and top 4 squares. That's okay. But then it must again be directly aligned, right? And that way you get visual consistency, which is important. Because the thing is that you want to actually balance between every page looking exactly the same, which might be a bit boring, to every page looking completely different, which might be just far too much. Right? So you want to have a little bit of flexibility that allows you to vary things, to keep it interesting. But at the same time, you want to have this visual consistency so that it all looks like it belongs together. And that is what you need a grid for. If you want to, you can also, for example, throw lines in, have column lines. And the important thing is, of course, if you have these columns, that you want them at the bottom. If you have multiple columns, you actually want them all to end up, again, because they form a line, so at the bottom, they all have to end the same way. I don't think that anybody of you did 2 columns, they all had a single column today, right? But if you do more than one...
Or on one page.
Yeah. So the point being, like, if you have 2 columns and they both go to the bottom of the page, you want them to end the exact same way, because again, they form a horizontal line. Do they do that? Well, but that's not, I mean, if the text goes all the way down. But for those that do go down, do they align?
Yeah, the ones. Yeah.
Of course, the problem is that if you, for example, have one column with no headline in there, and you have another column where there's 1 or 2 headlines in there, it gets a bit tricky, right? Because they're not exactly the same. However, InDesign has got a specific feature to essentially change the line spacing slightly so that it falls back into the grid, which is very convenient. Page breaks. So if you do have a headline that spans 2 pages, which is perfectly okay, you must remember that if you bind it in the middle, you will lose space. That means you cannot have any words in the spine itself, right? And also you cannot have a word, you cannot like have a word and like have it in 2 parts separated. I mean, don't do that either. Right? So, what do you reckon?
Looks like an Excel grid.
Mm-hmm. What would you do to improve it?
Excel tends to right-align numbers and left-align words.
So how would you improve this?
Probably makes it over to the left. the a bit on some of the ropes. I mean, sometimes you have like one color for each other line and another color for the other.
Yeah, so alternating in the background. That's something you can do, yes.
Dead by killing.
What else would you improve?
Change some of the alignments and columns.
And how would you change them?
Well, actually, some of the columns are different heights, so I'd probably make the name column wider so rows are the same height.
Yeah, because the Lindenberg case in CME CU take up to 2 lines. So indeed, so 1 line.
That's a good idea. Any other ideas?
Or
Fade out the lines and only put lines around groupings.
Doing it, yeah.
Because that way every cell has a line around it, but
Spacing between the groups.
Meaning?
You have 3 groups, so you have increase the spacing for the action part, for the simulation part. And you could, I don't know if it would work, but you could as well do spacing for the second column. Have real time, people shoot at space and military, but probably less spacing than you did in the first column. Sort of group sections together.
What about the numbers?
right alignment.
Right line is probably a good idea. Why?
Because it's default.
Why?
All the zeros line up.
Decimal points line up.
Line up,
Easier to judge actually the quantity.
yeah.
So shall we do a before after? Is that better?
You're suddenly selling a lot less.
So, tables is something to take care of. I have a whole book in my office called "Show Me the Numbers." It talks all about the layout of tables and graphs and so forth. So, come by and have a look.
How big is this book?
This,
Wow.
quite impressive, huh? So the point being is this is something that you have to again design, and again it's about hierarchy, it's about grouping, it's about alignments, it's about axis. Like, for example, here the numbers. Can you see my hand? Yeah. So, I didn't actually put a point in there, but just if you make a bit of space there, you see the thousands, which makes it much easier to see, right? Figures. As a rule of thumb, whenever you include a figure, you must talk about it in the text. So here it says, see figure 2, and then you have a figure 2, right? This is something you just have to do. Every figure has a caption, and every figure must be referenced in the text. Don't have it like you write your text, and then you just have a picture in there. And then people ask themselves, so what's the connection between this image and what I'm actually reading there? Then you might have a reason why you think it fit, but you must actually explicitly mention in the text, for this purpose, here we got an example of a parrot, see figure 2. Right?
Judging by, because most live reports to date have been, see this graph to see pretty things. It's
Bibliography. If you don't know any better, just use the APA style. Did you actually use a reference manager before? What did you use?
Yeah, I used it in BASIC. Different ways of doing bibliography. I did the APA style.
Yeah. Did you ever use a reference manager?
No, I did IEEE by hand.
Oh, okay. IEEE by hand.
Or, by word, just
You
space.
You really do like to suffer, don't you?
I was in engineering. IEEE is standard, though.
No, that's perfectly okay. But I'm talking about a software that helps you to do the formatting automatically for you in the IEEE standard.
Wow.
Does that exist?
No idea. I just went italics, close bracket.
No. So this university has got a site license for a software called EndNote. Right?
That was on the computers. I never used it.
EndNote essentially is a little database where you essentially put all your references in, and then it does all the formatting for you. And that includes not only in the end that you would have this beautiful list, but it also does the in-text citations for you.
Can you choose the method, Chicago method?
Yes, you can. Oh, absolutely. Actually, one of the things about EndNote is it has several thousand numbers of styles. So it's a good chance for the journal that you're submitting to, if that style they have, you can just select it, and it does all the formatting for you.
So I saw it on all the computers, but we never told what it did, so I just left it alone.
So it's a very good idea. For your thesis, you must use this. I'm just going to tell you, use it. It's going to save you so much time. When you start doing a literature review, whenever you want to cite something, put it into EndNote. Once you have it into EndNote, you can put it into your report. It's going to save you an enormous amount of time. It doesn't even matter if you're going to use Word or InDesign or LaTeX. It doesn't matter. It will save you a lot of time to use it.
If you use, for instance, InDesign, well, some struggle with the W03 stuff. But if you use EndNote, will it then update your notes and stuff like that in the text? You can do use numbers and stuff like that.
Well, with EndNote and Word, yes.
Yeah, InDesign is.
I'm not 100% sure how much they collaborate. But what you can, InDesign is not a tool for writing. InDesign is a tool for layout. So what you would do is you actually would write your text in Word or another text editor first, do all your citations, and then you actually copy over the text into InDesign to make the layout if you wanted to. In any case, so again, it's a real time saver. Use it. It's going to make your life so much less painful. So, which of these is good and which of these is not?
Apparently the uppercase is difficult to read.
Say top left is.
Apparently justifies forbidden title.
Why do you think justify is not a good idea in headlines?
Again, it's not as noticeable as justified if the rest of the text is.
Yeah, look at these white spaces here. Look at these gaps. If you only have 3 words in a column, you must increase the white space so much to make it work. It just looks horrible. The white space is the problem.
Off the right, you just got a single line on the lower level.
So, how about this? Does this work for you?
Level 1 heading might be slightly big, but
Yeah. Heading at level 2 was fine, I think.
Need some more space between the heading and level 1 and text below.
Yeah.
The G is almost hitting the word below.
level 3 might be slightly small. It's hard to tell with a heading.
Absolutely right. So again, it's about contrast, right? So let's do before, after.
It seems to be the same formula. It's very capitalized everything.
I see the point. You must, if you, let's say, in your report, decide to have 3 levels of hierarchy, you first design actually all of your headlines and the text so that they are actually being, in harmony. So that there's, here the difference between 1 and 2 is tremendous. Between 2 and 3, not so much, right? It's not balanced. Here it is, right? It is more balanced, right? So who of you used actually styles in Word or in InDesign?
I think I've just used the default Word styles. Right? You click the button, it says heading, subheading up top.
Yeah, that's already a good step forward. So styles is the way to go about this. Why?
I don't know.
Consistency.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So let's say you marked actually all of your paragraphs, with styles, say headline 1. If you later on want to change headline 1, every instance in your text will be changed. If you had done this manually, you would have to go through your whole text again and change everything. It's really not, I mean, it saves you so much time. Furthermore, the indexing is based on the headlines, on the headings. Right? So if you want to create an automatic index, it only works with the headings.
That's why you always define your integers at the top and then use the name all the way down.
Here's something else you can do again. If you have, let's say, you know, on the top of the page, you can actually have section headings, and you can do all sorts of things with it. Right? You can put the name of the chapter in there. You can put lines in there. You can design it as well.
The bottom one looks a bit silly.
I think there's something went wrong there. I have to look it up. So, intents, we talked about that already before. So let's just go quickly through it. The point is, if you have a paragraph, and you see here's an example where the paragraph ends here, it doesn't give you a lot of information about, you know, the paragraph, so then you must use an intent. But not the first one, because that's not necessary. Right?
Or just indented all or none.
And the other thing that you have to do is, of course, the spacing, as we talked about before. This one, it's not sure, does it belong to this side or does it belong to the bottom, right? So the spacing should be clear. It's a little bit more above than below. Then it's clear that this headline belongs to this. Right? Lists, we talked about this before. So here you cannot, it's not visually grouped, right? So it's not clear where actually all the items are. So again, the idea is that you put the spacing between the items bigger than within the item, right? And also have an icon there that's, I mean, it doesn't have to be a black dot. It can be other things as well, right? But it should not be too thick. It should not be too thin, right? On the here, it is too thin. It doesn't actually give you any indication like, oh, this is an item, right? So here are a couple of books that you can have a look at. I have them in my room. So Show Me Numbers, I already told you about, you know, graphs and so forth. This one is a really nice book. I can highly recommend it. If you read it front to back, it tells you all the things to do. And if you read it back to front, it tells you all the things not to do. It's an excellent book and very short, very good to do. This is a bit more extended version. It talks a lot about the topography in general. For grids, Making Breaking the Grids is a good book about, you know, how to do designs for grid designs for print, but also a bit for interactive things. If you're looking for web design, there are actually grid systems available, right? So there's a 960 grid system. It's a CSS-based system, and you can actually tell it, okay, this is how I want my grid to be, and these are the boxes, and then you can actually, you know, assign elements to a box, and then you get visual consistency, right? So for next week, it's going to be a difficult one.
Wow.
A poster. Take a previous project of yours. It may be, you know, the report that you've done right now. It can be something else. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. Take something you like. It can be, if you have other purposes, like, for example, your band is going to play next week and you want to have a poster.
Mm.
You've got an exhibition and you have to do something for it. Or anything that you would think like, well, this is a good, you know, it's actually maybe good for you otherwise as well. Please, you know, consider using it. Again, one stone, two flies, two birds. So, mount the poster.
How do you want it mounted?
March 19th, that's wrong.
When you say mount, how do you want it mounted?
Well, we talked about it before. Huh? Mounting, we had it for the logo.
Okay.
Right?
A0 is big.
A0 is big.
It's huge.
It's difficult to mount.
Well, see, the problem is, if you go somewhere, let's say you have a presentation at a client. If you just have a printout, what are you going to do at the client? Are you going to hold it? Do you hope that your client has got an empty wall? You never know what you're going to find, right? That's why mounting it is a pretty good idea, because then you can just put it up there.
put it up there with A0.
Yes.
It's 16 times the size of
A0 is big, and there's a particular reason why we do that. And the reason is that it's very different. I mean, here with a screen like this, you still got a little bit of a matching between what you see and what you print. If you design for something that's huge, the screen is not necessarily a good representation anymore.
Imagine Illustrator would be an obvious tool, but it would also be possible to use PowerPoint and stuff like that to create posters.
Well,
I think PowerPoint's the wrong program.
yes, PowerPoint is, well, see, the point is a lot of people don't have access to or don't know anything about Illustrator. So that's why a lot of researchers end up using PowerPoint, because it is also, in a way, a layout tool, but it's really not a good idea. So use Illustrator.
And there's a plotter somewhere around.
The university does have a printing service, but I think they outsourced anything that goes over A3 or A2 or so, A2 or so. So you have to probably go outside. There's one in the Bushian Center, for example.
Okay.
There are other places. If you do a poster, just a couple of tips. Things you have to think about is, for what purpose is this? You know, where and when is it going to be presented, and to whom will I present? Makes a huge difference. For example, if you would go to a conference, there's a poster session, and you stand next to the poster. That is something else than you hanging a poster in an exhibition and leave. So are you going to stand next to it, yes or no?
I'm trying to think if any of my previous projects are even posterable.
Right, I mean, it's up to you. I mean, I'm certain that you've done lots of projects before, so essentially, in that sense, pick something that is to your liking, and then communicate it. Clear? Questions?
Yeah. Probably you have to cut it, so it won't be exactly A0. But
No. The printer
does
don't do a sheet of paper. They have a roll, and the roll is bigger than A0. So yes, you can cut it.
If you go to a print shop, they'll cut it for you.
Yeah.
You need a long ruler, obviously. A sharp knife definitely helps.
You can transport it in.
Yes, it's going to be the poster to be easy because you. Yeah, good idea.
But you've mounted it.
Okay, shall we then stop the recordings?
Yeah.
I have absolutely no idea what to do at all.